In the words of Frank Costanza, I'm back, baby. That's right. I'm back, and the Ian Cameron Sports Report is back, and I'm thrilled to have the show now on its new home here at Pub Sports Radio. The Ian Cameron Sports Report is back. Here we are, back again, Tuesday, October 13th for this season premiere, I guess you could say, edition of the Ian Cameron Sports Report. Now, for those of you that may be watching this video and this show for the first time, I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson here, a crash course, if you will. The Ian Cameron Sports Report is a show that I've done on and off for the last year or two on my own personal YouTube channel. And really what it is just a show where I look back on the previous night from a betting standpoint. We'll talk about, some games where the books did well, books didn't do well, bad beats, bad bets, that kind of stuff from the night before. And then most of the show will be game breakdowns of the biggest games in multiple sports that particular day. And then we wrap it up. I try to keep it within 15 to 30 minutes in terms of length and not let it go too long. And I've been doing this show on and off on my own YouTube channel for the last year or two. And now you'll be able to find it right here on Pub Sports Radio. And a thanks to everybody at Pub Sports Radio for allowing me the chance to bring the Ian Cameron Sports Report back here on YouTube, on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. Of course, I've already got a weekly football show live on Thursdays here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel, Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. I'm also, I did a college football show last Saturday with Connor Mack that's just started here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. So definitely lots to look forward to, and great to have the Ian Cameron Sports Report back. And don't think for a second that I didn't hear the people on Twitter at Bobano that follow me, and a bunch of you saying, I missed the Ian Cameron Sports Report. What happened to it? Well, here's what happened to it. Of course, I really got it going again in January and pretty much did the show almost every day until the pandemic struck in March. And then, of course, all the sports went on hiatus. So did the show. I brought the show back when sports resumed in late July, but I found myself just swamped in terms of having to do so many different things on a daily basis. At that time, NBA and NHL were back. Baseball was back. There were games around the clock, morning, noon, and night, it seemed. And it just really chipped away at the time that I had to adequately prepare and actually record this show on a regular basis. So that's why I put it on hiatus again. But I do appreciate everyone that said, Ian, I missed the Ian Cameron Sports Report. What happened to it? Are you going to be bringing it back? Well, I listened, and here you go. It's back. Ian Cameron Sports Report right here on its new home at the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and it's good to be back. With that in mind, let's do a weekend recap, NFL and college football. We'll start with NFL first. I think the biggest thing to talk about from a betting perspective with the NFL this past week is finally an adjustment in the results that we're seeing when it comes to totals, over-unders. First 4 weeks of the season, we know scoring has been up league-wide in the NFL. We've seen the average totals in each week increase incrementally. The week 1 average total was, I believe, 44.8, and the week 5 total this past week ended up at 50.6. So you've seen gradual increases in the total. Up until this week, overs had cashed more than unders every single week. Week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. We all saw more overs than unders cash in each of those weeks. And finally, here in week 5, we've got more unders than overs so far. It finally took to seeing the average total here in week 5 into the 50s now to finally have a week where we've seen more unders than overs. Not by a lot, 7 unders, 6 overs so far here in week 5, with still the Buffalo-Tennessee game pending tonight, and we'll preview that game in just a little bit. But definitely an adjustment, and you figured it had to happen at some point. Finally, we've seen adjustment in the totals, and I think now defenses are at least finally going to start to get more comfortable with gap control and open field tackling, which I think has been a huge issue across this league. Just bad, porous, shoddy, shabby tackling league-wide, which has led to so many big plays on offense. I think now we're finally getting to a point where defenses are starting to knock off some of the rust, and you're starting to see them get more comfortable in terms of being able to make stops, get off the field, and make plays. In terms of teams from the weekend that stuck out to me, Obviously, the Dak Prescott injury, significant and something worth talking about moving forward. Horrendous to see it. I mean, you could be the most hateful Dallas Cowboys person out there. You could hate Dallas more than life itself. You really could. And you still, I think, have to find it, even in your own heart, if you hate Dallas that much, you had to be still somewhat just gutted to see what happened to Dak Prescott. Because Dak Prescott, from all indications, is a good man off the field. And we know what kind of a quarterback he's been on the field. We also know what kind of personal struggles he's dealt with off the field as well, losing his brother, all kinds of situations, depression he's battled, all this stuff. And to see the injury happen to him, and just thank goodness they didn't show the replay too much, because it was absolutely, it made you jump out of your seat, to see just the hideous injury he suffered on Sunday against the Giants. Ankle surgery. Obviously, his season is over. They expect 4 to 6 months recovery time minimum for Dak Prescott. So certainly wish him well in his recovery. But from a betting perspective, this means Andy Dalton is the quarterback. He's the guy for the Dallas Cowboys the rest of the season. And when obviously you got to downgrade Dallas a little bit when you go from Dak to Andy Dalton. But there was a sentiment out there, I think, amongst the majority of football bettors and just the NFL public in general, that Andy Dalton stinks. He's horrible. He's totally incapable of leading an NFL offense at this stage of his career because of just the dreadful way it ended for him with the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that's coming on a little bit too strong, to be honest with you. Let's not forget, Cincinnati had injuries galore throughout the last couple of years he was there. Remember, early in his career with Marvin Lewis, this is a guy that won 9-10 wins won 9-10 games, majority of regular seasons early in his career with the Bengals. He didn't have a lot to work with. Other than A.J. Green, for years they didn't have a lot of great skill position talent at wide receiver. Running back, until they drafted Joe Mixon, was a bit of a problem. And the offensive line for the last several years has been offensive in a bad way. The offensive line just could not protect adequately. It's been bad when Andy Dalton was in Cincinnati. He didn't have a lot of pieces around him to make that offense go. Sure, he didn't play well at times. There's no question. You can't absolve Andy Dalton of blame for why the Bengals offense in the last couple of years with him there in Cincinnati, why it struggled. But the point I'm trying to make is he's in a better position to be set up to succeed, I think, here with the Dallas Cowboys now that he's taking over for Dak Prescott. Let's be honest. He's got a better offensive line here in Dallas than anything he had the last couple of years in Cincinnati. Did you see the Bengals offensive line, by the way, last Sunday against Baltimore that almost got Joe Burrow's head taken off? They had that poor rookie quarterback pulverized in that game. That's how bad that offensive line was. That's a similar offensive line to what Andy Dalton had to deal with in Cincinnati. In Dallas, though, at least now he's got a little bit better offensive line. Obviously, much greater skill position talent when you think of the weapons he's got at receiver with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, this is now a group of wide receivers he can make plays to. And you saw the play that was made down the stretch, his receiver going up and getting it to set up the game winner against the Giants. He's got Zeke Elliott in the backfield. He's just got more pieces around him to take pressure off Andy Dalton. He doesn't have to do a ton. Just make plays that are there, rely on protection that should at least be better than what you got in Cincinnati. So to me, when I'm evaluating Dallas moving forward without Dak Prescott, the thing that stands out to me is I don't think they're completely done for on offense. I mean, I don't think they're going to light it up offensively quite the way they did with Dak under center. But I think Andy Dalton's capable if he can just, not turn it over, make plays that are there, rely on Zeke. You've got an offensive line that's going to, I think, afford you more protection and time to throw the football. There's going to be opportunities, I think, for Andy Dalton to succeed here. But it's not going to matter unless Dallas gets better defensively. That defense continues to suck, continues to be absolutely brutal. They were again against the Giants. That was a putrid Giants offense that at times moved the football at will against Dallas on Sunday, even though the Cowboys escaped with the win. So Dallas, very interesting to see them moving forward. Personally, to me, I don't think that all hope is lost offensively anyway without Dak Prescott, because I think Andy Dalton, who has been to at least gotten his teams to the playoffs, never won a playoff game, but we're talking about, can you win in the regular season with Andy Dalton? Forget playoffs. Who cares? We'll We'll think about that and we'll worry about that in January. I'm talking about, can you win games right now in the regular season? And can you be a functional, solid, productive offense with Andy Dalton at quarterback? I honestly think Dallas can. So we'll see if they're able to keep the offense at least productive and efficient moving forward, even without Dak Prescott. We've got to talk San Francisco 49ers. I mean, the injuries have just caught up with them. We know on defense they're ravaged with, multiple defensive linemen, including, of course, Nick Bosa out. We know Richard Sherman has been out and is apparently a setback in his injury as well. Injuries in the secondary, injuries in the defensive line. They've had injuries at wide receiver. Jimmy Garoppolo has been hurt. He came back and clearly came back too soon. He was not moving around very well, and he was just terrible with his pocket presence. Terrible in terms of his downfield passing game against Miami. Just didn't seem. It seemed like he was rushed to returning. And the 49ers defense has just been, that's 2 weeks in a row now where even the Eagles moved the football for as well as they've done at any point this year against this beleaguered and injury depleted 49ers defense. And Ryan Fitzpatrick was Fitzmagic against that depleted defense on Sunday. And that's now back-to-back weeks, by the way. San Francisco laying more than a touchdown has lost the game outright. Against Philadelphia, of course, on Sunday night a couple weeks ago. And again, Sunday against Miami. So now the 49ers, and now you see the adjustment. I mean, the Rams and the 49ers coming up on Sunday. The Rams, I believe the 49ers were favored just over a week ago against the Rams. And now the Rams are a 3.5-point road favorite in San Francisco. The betting markets are finally adjusting to the problems that the San Francisco 49ers are having right now. That is becoming clear and evident. How about the Carolina Panthers and Matt Rule? How about the fact that this was not supposed to be the season where you're set up to succeed as a first-year NFL head coach and a rookie head coach with new systems, new schemes, new coordinators, very little training camp time, no preseason games whatsoever. You were supposed to be in a situation that was going to be too much to overcome. But what has Carolina done? They've now won 3 in a row. They're 3-2. And Matt Rule is looking like he's going to be the NFL coaching success story, perhaps, that he was in college at Temple and Baylor. Because what he's doing right now with Carolina, it's impressive. Teddy Bridgewater, it's looking like a stroke of genius, bringing him in as the starting quarterback. He's been nothing but solid, nothing but steady for the Panthers. And how about the way they've been able to get Mike Davis to produce in the ground game and catching the football out of the backfield, the same two things that Christian McCaffrey, who remains out with injury, was pretty damn good at. And yet they haven't skipped a beat with Mike Davis there. I like the receiving core, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, who had a big touchdown grab against Atlanta on Sunday, and of course Robbie Anderson, who they got from the Jets. There's a lot to like with Carolina. They're still spotty on defense. That's still their Achilles heel, especially that secondary. You can throw on the Panthers a little bit. I think they've been okay against the run this season, but that secondary is a little bit suspect. But certainly got to like the way the trajectory is pointing up on the Carolina Panthers right now, currently. Russell Wilson magic one more time for Seattle against Minnesota. Absolutely horrendous loss for the Vikings. They led the majority of the game, and now they sit 1-4 in a really, really tough spot in terms of now trying to crawl out of that hole and make the playoffs. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks somehow making plays and putting that drive together. I mean, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, the short list of quarterbacks where you don't want to give these guys the chance to beat you on a game-winning drive. And that's exactly what Seattle did on Sunday. What else stuck out in terms of NFL results here on Sunday? How about the Browns? Browns pretty impressive against the Colts. Phillip Rivers, man, I don't want to say he's shot, he's done, but this is the Phillip Rivers we've seen the last 2 years, essentially, where makes a couple of good plays, but for the most part, inaccurate, bad decisions, terrible turnovers, ill-timed, and we saw all of that on display for Phillip Rivers against Cleveland. And we're starting to see my thinking going into that game, because I bet Cleveland. I sent it out to my subscribers as part of my NFL card. NFL card, by the way, for me Sunday went 7-4, so it was a really good NFL Sunday for me and the subscribers. I'll give you some information on that at the end of the show in terms of my subscription service. But in terms of Phillip Rivers, it's just this is kind of what the guy you've gotten. Not the arm strength he used to have. He's throwing up ducks, dying quails half the time in terms of his passes down the field. It's not been pretty. And of course, bad interceptions, and the Colts couldn't overcome it. I worry about Indy a little bit because they started 3-1, but they feasted on a weak schedule. The defense had all these terrific stats, being one of the best defenses in the NFL, but they hadn't played any sort of good offense or quarterback before facing Cleveland on Sunday, and they got ripped apart. So all of a sudden, I'm a little worried for the Colts that maybe, I don't want to say fraudulent, but clearly I don't think we're quite as good as that 3-1 start would indicate. And I think the Cleveland Browns kind of showed that when they knocked off the Colts on Sunday. College football. How about the SEC going 6-1 to the over on Saturday in the SEC games? This ain't your fathers or grandfathers 17-14 or 21-17 final score SEC anymore, is it? I mean, no, not at all. I mean, we're seeing points, we're seeing offense, we're seeing shabby defense, struggling defenses across this conference so far. And again, 6 out of 7 SEC conference games on Saturday fly over the total. And I think there's a couple of things for that. One, obviously, is the lack of a proper camp before the college football season. You can't work on, discipline and assignment football defensively and tackling, and it takes a while for that to happen. Plus, you've got these coaches and play callers in the SEC that are very innovative and creative and doing different formations, play to play, running faster pace like Mike Leach. And of course, Lane Kiffin is he's schemed and designed and play called his tail off so far on offense for Ole Miss. I mean, I've been so impressed what I've seen out of Ole Miss offensively. Now, defensively, they're terrible, and they showed it again against Alabama on Saturday. But offensively, the play calling you're seeing from Lane Kiffin and his coaching staff down there in Oxford with this Rebels team, it's impressive to see. And they've got defenses off balance, running the football, throwing the football, different formations, and defenses aren't prepared to stop it. As simple as that. And I think those two factors, where you got more innovative offenses, creative offenses, creating confusion and keeping defenses off balance, along with, again, just like we've seen in the NFL with a surge in scoring early in the season because lack of camp, lack of preseason, tackling is usually lagging behind. It was in the NFL, and so far it has been as well in college football. So there's a bunch of reasons, but just keep in mind, the SEC, we think of this conference as, in the trenches, grind it out, slugfest, lower scoring type of football. That hasn't been the SEC through the first 3 weeks of the college football season this year. We have seen some offense. We've seen some explosions in points. And it's just a question of when do the totals catch up? How much longer are we going to see maybe the overs a step or two ahead of the unders in this conference? That remains to be seen. Obviously, in terms of what we saw win-loss-wise over the weekend, Texas A&M, I'll give them credit. They beat Florida, and I didn't see that coming. Kellen Mond had his best game I've ever seen him play. Kellen Mond has been one of those guys for the A&M Aggies at quarterback where he's got all the potential in the world, but just never shows up in a big game and doesn't play his best when the lights are the brightest. And finally he did. And you got to give A&M credit for that. They matched a very, very explosive Florida Gators offense point for point in that game, flew over the total, which was an easy winner for me, part of my Saturday in college football. So it was a really, really good performance by Kellen Mond for a guy that's been erratic throughout his college career. You give him credit for that. Alabama, as mentioned, surviving Ole Miss, but this ain't the same Nick Saban defense. This is a defense that if you've got a mobile quarterback and you've got a faster-paced, up-tempo offense, you've got that combination working for you, and Ole Miss did against them on Saturday, you can have success. Mobile quarterbacks have been the kryptonite of Alabama, even when they had great defenses the last several seasons. And now you got these faster-paced, up-tempo offenses that are trying to keep Alabama from substituting, bringing in fresh bodies on that defensive line. And you just saw, as that game went on, there was no pass rush to be had from Alabama. I think there's a formula out there and a blueprint out there that is getting coaches into that habit of, you know what? We found a flaw. We found a weakness. We found a vulnerability with the Alabama defense right now, something we can exploit. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a lot of these coaches try the same thing, crank up the tempo, get this Alabama team on their heels a little bit defensively. It didn't work for Ole Miss because their defense is just that bad and couldn't stop Mac Jones and the Alabama offense at all. But Alabama's defense is a concern, and certainly when you look ahead to Georgia coming up this Saturday, the big showdown there between the Crimson Tide and Bulldogs. The Georgia defense sure looks to me on paper like it's better than Alabama's right now, and that's always intriguing when you're getting points with the better defense. And to me, so far, the better defense looks to be Georgia going into that game. However, the counter argument to that is if Georgia falls behind Alabama and that potent, electrifying offense of theirs, do they have the offense, Georgia, to come back through the back door and get back in the game? I mean, Stetson Bennett's been solid. I get it. But, I think it's still a work in progress, that Georgia offense. So it's a fascinating game. We'll get into that more later this week. But that's some college football as well from this past weekend. So that's a look at the weekend that was. We'll do that. Usually on Mondays is when we'll do the football weekend recap segment on the Ian Cameron Sports Report. But this is the first show of the week today because yesterday was Canadian Thanksgiving. But normally moving forward, I will be doing the football weekend recap on Mondays right here on the Ian Cameron Sports Report. All right, enough about what's happened. Let's talk about what is going to happen. We're going to break down 3 games today on the Ian Cameron Sports Report, both baseball playoff games and the rescheduled Tuesday night NFL game, Buffalo, Tennessee. Let's do the baseball first. It's Game 2 NLCS, Atlanta Braves, LA Dodgers. Atlanta leading the series 1-0 after a big win last night, and now looking to take a 2-0 series lead tonight in Game 2. Big developments here in Game 2, which we'll get into. Current line for Game 2 of this series tonight has the Dodgers about -140 in this game. Atlanta plus 120, total 8, shaded to the over. And the big news is Clayton Kershaw, who was supposed to start Game 2 tonight for the LA Dodgers. He's no longer going to be starting. Back spasms, which has just been one of those constant, aggravating, reoccurring issues for Clayton Kershaw. And it struck again, this damn back of his, this freaking back. I mean, it keeps acting up at probably the worst times, and this is a bad time for it. For those back spasms to be an issue again, as he was set to start Game 2. He's been excellent in his first 2 postseason starts against the Brewers and the Padres so far here in the playoffs. And, I'm sure the Dodgers, especially after losing Game 1, they were really looking forward to having Kershaw on the bump tonight, but not going to happen. So it'll be Tony Gonsolin instead getting the start for the Dodgers. He's had a good season for the LA Dodgers. Make no mistake about it. He's been solid for the LA Dodgers during the regular season when pitching for them. So that's the good news. But we're talking about a guy that, really hasn't been pitching much here in the month of October so far. So you worry about all this time off. How is he going to look? How is he going to perform? When you haven't really pitched all that much since late September. Now you're thrown into the pressure cooker of a Game 2 in the NLCS against a red-hot Atlanta Braves line. Like, this Braves lineup is mashing the baseball right now. Just ask the Miami Marlins about it. I mean, everybody, Acuna, Freddie Freeman last night with a big home run. Austin Riley, who's had a bit of a disappointing season, comes up big for them. It's a great, Marcell Ozuna's had a great postseason at the plate for the Braves. I mean, they're getting everybody right now on board and contributing offensively for this team. And look, I understand the Dodgers, they've been the best team record-wise in the NL this season, but they've got some issues. I mean, we saw Blake Trinan last night, cough up the game in the 9th inning. Kenley Jansen's not been the closer that they can trust this season. They got a lot of Joe Kelly is probably the guy that they're probably got the most faith in right now, but even he can be erratic at times. The Dodgers have bullpen issues right now. And coming into this series, coming into these playoffs, I think you could have said the Braves bullpen, you'd maybe had some concerns about them. Braves bullpen has been at lights out. I like whatever up and down performance the Braves bullpen had during the regular season, that Atlanta bullpen's been a lot more stronger and a lot more sturdier here in the postseason. To be honest with you, I'm leaning Atlanta here in this game. I don't have a strong opinion. I'll say this right now. I didn't send out anything as an official play from a service standpoint in these two baseball games tonight. But I'm going to have a small play on Atlanta here. I am, because, look, Ian Anderson's a rookie. I get it. At first NLCS start, that didn't seem to phase Max Fried last night, who I thought was brilliant for the Braves. And Ian Anderson looks bet on all the way. 1.95 ERA, 1.08 whip, and 6 regular season starts. How about his postseason numbers? He's allowed 5 hits without a run allowed, with 17 strikeouts in 11.2 innings during the playoffs. So 11.2 innings of shutout ball, 5 hits allowed, and 17 strikeouts for Ian Anderson. Now, he's going to be tested here by the Dodgers, who are one of the best lineups in baseball, who are outstanding against right-handed pitching. I understand all of that. But Ian Anderson has brought it. And I've lost money going against this guy a couple times. I'm not doing that again here, especially now with Kershaw scratched and Tony Gonsolin, who hasn't pitched much lately, getting the nod for the Dodgers. So I understand it's a, maximum focus, intensity spot for the Dodgers. They don't want to go down 2-0, but you can't always just say, oh, the team lost yesterday, they're going to bounce back today. That didn't get you far with with Houston yesterday. They lost 2 in a row to Tampa Bay. Why can't the Dodgers lose 2 in a row to Atlanta the way the Braves are going right now? So for me, it's a lean for sure to the Atlanta side. I just can't lay a price with the Dodgers right now. Anderson's been good, and they got way too many question marks and concerns in their bullpen right now. Not to mention Gonsolin. I think he's a question mark. What do you get from him? He's capable. He can go out there and pitch well. For a guy that hasn't pitched much lately, I can't bank on that. So for me, it's Atlanta or pass in that game. ALCS Game 3, the second game of the doubleheader in baseball. Tampa Bay Rays, Houston Astros. We've got Tampa Bay minus 115 favorites here. 8.5 the total, shaded to the over. Ryan Yarbrough on the mound for the Tampa Bay Rays here in this one. We'll have to see how he fares. It's been a pretty solid season overall for Ryan Yarbrough. This will be his first career playoff start. He pitched 5 innings in relief against the Yankees, gave up 2 runs and 6 hits. We'll see how he goes here against the Houston Astros. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be Jose Urquidy on the mound for the Houston Astros in this game. Urquidy, has been pretty solid for the most part. Now, he is a fly ball pitcher. Tampa Bay has done a good job at the plate in terms of hitting home runs, so you do get a little bit concerned about that. But, to me, I definitely lean Astros here, because you've got some players on this Astros team that have had some decent numbers in the past against Ryan Yarbrough. But, boy, I mean, at some point, and if you're betting the Astros, I think part of it is you think that, look, they have to start hitting in the clutch at some point with runners in scoring position. I mean, their lack of clutch hitting so far in the first 2 games of the series, that's been the single biggest factor why they're down 2-0. They've had chances. They've had chances upon chances. They've had multiple innings with multiple base runners, and they've barely gotten anything in those innings. And that's been the difference in this series. They've had their opportunities. They've had bases loaded in multiple innings. They've had runners in scoring position, several innings in the first 2 games of this series, and they just have not been able, up and down that lineup, they have not been able to get that clutch big hit with guys on base. And obviously that's going to have to change for the Houston Astros here in Game 3. Ryan Yarbrough, I don't think this is the best matchup for him against Houston. So again, I got a little bit of a lean toward Houston, but this Tampa Bay team, you look at, they just find Houston's got to get the first runs of this game. They've got to get an early lead, and not just a 1-run lead like they had in Game 1. I'm talking about a 2, 3, 4-run lead. Put some cushion between you and the Rays, because you don't want to be battling this Tampa Bay Rays bullpen right now in a close game late, because it's advantage Tampa Bay. That bullpen continues to be outstanding. There's multiple flamethrowers that throw high 90s and throw gas that Kevin Cash can go to in that bullpen. So it's important for Houston to get out to a fast start here. So that's why if I were to look Astros and I lean that way, I'd maybe consider splitting it between first 5 and full game, because you just don't want, I think, all of the wager to be full game when you know you got that Rays bullpen, that vaunted Rays bullpen to deal with. So that's the way I would go with that one. And we wrap up the show with the NFL game, Tuesday Night Football. How about that? You can tell 2020 is a bonkers, crazy-ass year when you've got a Tuesday night NFL game to talk about. But here we go. Buffalo Bills, Tennessee Titans. Buffalo Bills minus 3.5-point road favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. This is a really, really interesting one to talk about because this is a battle of undefeated teams. Buffalo 4-0, Tennessee 3-0. And obviously the big storyline is the COVID-19 outbreak situation that has unfolded with the Tennessee Titans. And it's pretty bad. I mean, you're talking about 23 members of the overall organization, many of them players, that have been infected by the virus, by COVID-19 here going into this game. The group that's really been hit hard by the virus, from what I've read, from what I've gathered, is the receiving corps for Tennessee, and many players on their defense as well have gotten it. But the ones that are really hit by it, Corey Davis and Adam Humphries, who are, of course, two key receivers for Ryan Tannehill and this Tennessee Titans offense. They're now on the injured reserve list, out for this game tonight. The good news is it looks like A.J. Brown, who was out not due to COVID issues, but injury problems, knee injury had kept him out. He's looking like he's going to return tonight for the Tennessee Titans. That is definitely massive going against this Bills team, because you figure Tennessee's going to have to score some points tonight if they're going to be able to beat the Buffalo Bills. The Tennessee defense, I don't know what to make of them. I really don't right now. I think there's still some concerns there. Minnesota had success moving the ball up and down against them. Jacksonville shredded them, even though Tennessee escaped with the win in that game. Really, the only quality defensive game that Tennessee's played this year was the opener against Denver, that Monday night game back in week 1. Other than that, you've seen teams run the football successfully against the Titans and throw it through the air against them, especially through the air. Cousins had some big plays in the passing game. Gardner Minshew had some big plays throwing the football against this Tennessee defense. If those two guys are slinging it with success against Tennessee's stop unit, what on earth can Josh Allen and this prolific Bills passing game do? We know how good Josh Allen has been this season. Stephon Diggs has made a world of difference. He's got a true legit number 1 wide receiver now. The offensive line was upgraded in the offseason. And as a result, you're seeing this Bills team obviously be able to chuck the ball around the field. And I think definitely this is a Tennessee defense that, with the injuries or the COVID-19 player impacted players on that side of the ball that are going to be missing for this game, it's definitely a concern. No question about that. I look at this line and I say, you know what, with the way the Bills, they're 4-0 straight up. They're 3-1 against the spread. The only failed non-point spread cover for the Bills this season was that Miami backdoor touchdown in the last minute against the Bills a few weeks ago. Bills been undervalued from the beginning this season. They have been. Tennessee, still a very good team. Don't get me wrong. We know Ryan Tannehill has changed this team's fortunes offensively, because now they can throw the football with some success with Tannehill and not have to and force defenses not to load up the box to stop Derrick Henry all the time, because now they've got a quarterback that can throw the ball down the field. And ever since, by the way, Tannehill's took over as the starting quarterback last year, this has been an over machine, this Tennessee team. Most of their games have gone over the total. And I'd lean that way here in this game, over 51.5. I might have a small little entertainment sized bet. I don't have a strong opinion on this game, but certainly interested for a small play on the over here. From a side perspective, I'm very much interested in Buffalo here. It would be Buffalo or nothing for me. I'm hoping it gets down to -3 before kickoff. There's actually signs that this line could trickle down to 3. I mean, there has been a little bit of Tennessee money coming in, but if we get a flat 3 with Buffalo before kickoff, I'm interested in laying the field goal with the Bills, but it'll only be a very, very small, tiny play for me. And the reason for that is twofold. One is, look, you cannot underestimate the potential, at least. Now, this is a well-coached Bills team. Sean McDermott's done a good job. They're trying to say all the right things. They're focused on Tennessee. But when you've got a big game with the defending Super Bowl champions, Kansas City, next Monday, you worry a little bit about a look ahead spot, and you worry about the way the NFL handled this situation with Tennessee and this outbreak that has put the Buffalo Bills in a very unfortunate, uncomfortable situation where the Bills and Sean McDermott have pretty much had to spend the last week or so game planning and preparing for two different opponents, two different teams at the same time, Kansas City and Tennessee, because they weren't sure if this Tennessee game was going to be played, and they weren't sure if if the Tennessee game was going to be played, which it now is. They weren't sure when the Kansas City game was going to end up being moved to. So it's had the Bills scrambling and trying to install game plans and spending their prep time really on both teams for the last couple of weeks. So what that has me worried about is the Bills maybe lacking in execution a little bit because they've had to spend all of this time getting ready for two different teams when normally going into the next game, you're focused on that one opponent, the next team you got to play. But with the NFL leaving the Bills in limbo essentially for the last week, it's been a real tough preparation time really for the Bills prior to this game. So I worry about that a little bit. Plus, of course, the big Kansas City showdown next week. That being said, I think Buffalo is the better of these two teams. I know defensively they haven't hit their stride yet, far from it. In fact, their offense has improved rapidly, but you could say their defense has declined a little bit this season. That being said, Tennessee's defense hasn't shown me anything. Look, Minnesota moved the ball against them. Jacksonville moved the ball against them. So even though the Bills have had spotty defensive play this year, Tennessee's defense is an unproven commodity against a really good offense and really good quarterback, and they're going to see one tonight with Josh Allen and the Bills. So I lean Buffalo -3. It's the only way I would bet this game from a side perspective, and I would also lean over 51.5. Very high total. You're seeing the Bills totals get adjusted with the defense decline, but the offense improving. You're seeing it adjusted in the totals, but it would be Bills and over for me. And another thing to factor in, schedule comparison. Yeah, all you're going to hear about, two undefeated teams, battle of undefeated teams here on Tuesday Night Football. Well, guess what Tennessee's 3 victories came against? Denver, Jacksonville, and Minnesota, teams that are combined 3-11 this season. Those are the 3 wins for Tennessee. Not a single impressive victory in the bunch. Buffalo, okay, the first 2 wins were the Jets and the Dolphins. Those weren't very impressive, but at least the last 2 weeks, Buffalo beats the LA Rams, who are a very good team, potential NFC contender in my opinion, and the Las Vegas Raiders, who are a 3-2 team and just beat Kansas City on Sunday. So at least the Bills, and by the way, the 4 teams the Bills have beaten, Jets, Dolphins, Rams, Raiders, they're a combined 9-11 this season. So at least a better combined win-loss record and stronger strength of schedule so far for the Bills early in the season. At least they've beaten a couple of quality foes the last 2 weeks. Buffalo has. You can't say that about Tennessee. So Tennessee's unproven to me. I know they went to the AFC Championship last year. You got to give them credit for that. They upset Baltimore before losing to Kansas City, the eventual champs in the AFC Championship game. They're a good football team, but I think the Buffalo Bills are a little bit even better football team. So Bills -3, 3.5, hoping I get 3 over 51.5 would be the way I would go from a side and total perspective in this rare Tuesday night NFL matchup between the Buffalo Bills and Tennessee Titans. All right, that'll wrap it up, guys. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. A little bit longer than I would normally want the show to be. I'm trying to keep it 15 to 30 minutes, most of these shows, but for the first show, figured I'd go a little bit longer. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and thank you to Pub Sports Radio for allowing me to bring the Ian Cameron Sports Report to the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel on a daily basis. By the way, this show will be on weekdays, Monday to Friday. I won't be doing this show on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. It'll be just Monday to Friday here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel with the Ian Cameron Sports Report. Friday will be the big football preview show for the weekend. We'll talk a bunch of college football games on Saturday and a bunch of NFL games on Sunday, and we'll break a bunch of games down from a betting perspective on the Friday edition each week of the Ian Cameron Sports Report. So even though I'm not going to do a show Saturday or Sunday, I'm not leaving you hanging. We're doing a big NFL and college football preview show every Friday here on the Ian Cameron Sports Report throughout the remainder of the football season. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. And by the way, if you're interested in an Ian Cameron capping subscription, send an email to bobano350@gmail.com We're on an outstanding NFL and college football run to begin the season. Profitable, plus units in both so far this season, and looking to continue that this week. So if you're interested, $75 a month for all sports. Send an email to bobano350@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to the Ian Cameron Sports Report. I will be back tomorrow on Wednesday with the next edition of the show. Great to be here on the Pub Sports Radio channel. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the games and good luck on this Tuesday. And I'll be back with you tomorrow on Wednesday right here on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel for another edition of the Ian Cameron Sports